I'm Anthony Conklin, and this is the Anthony Conklin Show, where we help business owners and entrepreneurs connect their passion and purpose by building a bridge called Why. Welcome to my show where we interview leaders and icons in their industry. And tonight I have a very special guest, someone who's been a mentor of mine from a distance for a number of years. He is an international speaker. He's an author and a creator of thesalesblog.com. I'd like to welcome Mr. Anthony Iannarino. Anthony, how you doing tonight, man?
I'm wonderful. It's not been that much of a distance, has it? I mean,
no,
we
not
talk
so
on
much.
the phone. You're one of the few people I'm Snapchatting with regularly.
Yeah, Anthony's been recently introduced to Snapchat. He's really kind of getting hold of it, but we have to help him with the creativity part. But I think he's doing a fantastic job. So
I have twin daughters who are 16, and I keep telling them, like, I'm way better than you on a lot of other platforms, but Snapchat, they got me beat.
Yeah, Snapchat definitely has its challenges, especially for people of our generation, because they say Snapchat is aging up, but it's an interesting platform. We're all trying to figure it out, and I definitely want to talk about some social media stuff with you as we get through the interview. So Anthony, I've known you for a number of years, and you and I have had I've had the pleasure of speaking to you on a number of occasions. You've actually given me some great advice when I interviewed life strategist, business strategist Tony Robbins. You gave me some pointers. I appreciate you being there and giving me some guidance. But I want to talk about you. I want to talk about your story, but I really want to focus on things that are really important for you and things that you want to get across to the audience today. So I really want to kind of go back to the beginning, and not to be a cliche-ish interview question, but how did it all really start for you to become this sales leader and this entrepreneur? Where did it all really start? What was that aha moment to say, okay, I'm going to do this stuff?
It's funny because that question is a pretty common question about when did you have the aha moment. I never had one aha moment. I had aha moments. You know, you're on a path and then something happens and things change and you recognize that something's changed. And that's how it was for me. So I was a poor kid. Single mom raising 4 kids from single mom who raised 5 kids, and growing up in an apartment complex. I mean, I can tell you today we got the news that Brian Johnson, the lead singer from AC/DC, is almost completely deaf and he had to cancel the tour. Oof. And one of my earliest memories is being 13 or 14 years old and the Back in Black record comes out. And when you're a kid, you're growing up in an apartment complex and there's nobody that's an entrepreneur. Everybody just wants a job. I mean, they just want a job because that's the thing that's going to give them security and let them have income. That becomes sort of your view of the world, is that's what's available to you. And I found rock and roll. I mean, so that was probably the first aha. I was like, wait a second, this is the greatest job on earth, rock singer. And I mean, that album followed by Def Leppard's High and Dry. And then for those about to rock, and Judas Priest Screaming for Vengeance, and so on down the line. And I ended up going to a bunch of concerts. And the first aha was you could get out of the apartment complex. But for me, the only path out of the apartment complex was rock and roll. So that's what I did. I formed a band my last year of high school, a hair metal band. And we went out and toured around Ohio. That's the first aha moment. And that took me to Los Angeles. And I got a job. I'd worked in the family business in temporary staffing, and I got a job and I got forced into outside sales. And the last thing in the world that I could have ever imagined was selling anything. I mean, I thought salespeople are selfish, manipulative, dirty, people that make you do things you don't want to do. And my only reference point was a car salesperson. I mean, I never bought anything else. So
sure. All
I knew was that salespeople behaved really badly. I had one literally put his arms out and block the door and say, I'm not letting you leave here if you're not in that car. I mean, so that was my whole reference point. I didn't have anything else. And when my manager said, I want you to go into full-time outside sales, he said, I want you to cut your hair, which was that was a problem. It's not a problem now, but it was a problem then. And I swear I thought he said, I want you to become a psychopathic axe murderer and go on a killing spree in the greater Los Angeles area. Wow. Because that's what I thought about sales. And so under him, I mean, working for him, and he's my mentor, I find out that selling is not something that you do to somebody. It's something that you do for somebody and with somebody. Right. And I ended up helping people solve big problems that they had for a long time. And I liked that. And
Go
Go ahead.
No. I think it's a great story. I love the color that you add to that story. I want to focus on that one thing that you just said, because you're really getting it to the heart of your journey. So you think of salespeople as these, we call them snake oil salesmen, bad people. So if we fast forward just for a quick minute, and then we'll come back to Anthony's story. Have salespeople really changed since then? I mean, are they still that forceful, jam it down your throat, 100 calls, boiler room, snake oil salesman kind of people? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think there's like maybe 11 or 12 of those guys. I mean, mostly they're not. Mostly they're way too soft now. And I think what happens is everything's a pendulum, right? So we were so bad, the behaviors were so bad for so long that customers and prospects started to develop a way to deal with them, which was to shut them down, shut them out. And so people started to behave better. And now they're so soft that they're afraid of asking for anything because they don't want to come across as salesy. That's the word that they use, salesy. I don't want to be salesy.
Right.
I'm like, well, what does that mean? I mean, if it means manipulative and self-oriented, no, you don't want to be that. But if you have a recommendation about what the next step somebody should take is, you need to ask for that. So it's a balance. And I think we've swung so far that people are so soft now, they're not doing what they need to do.
So it's kind of the pendulum has swung to the other side, and people are afraid to, we call it the ask, and listen,
Yeah.
And we all follow the same people, Anthony. You and I know, we know a guy named Gary, a guy named Grant. We all know these people. We know what they do. But when you start thinking about what salespeople do today, they're so afraid because people are so sensitive nowadays, because information is flying out of every social media platform, every blog, every email, and people are afraid to really ask for the sale. And, I look at you in your journey as a sales leader, and, so what are some of the things that you can share on your journey, not going from rock and roll hairband leader through this sales journey to being a sales leader today? I mean, define sales leader, what it is today and what it should be. And for the purposes of the folks that are listening to the replay, or the purpose of the people that are in the chat here today, a lot of people are social media, digital marketing people, and they really know marketing well, but I'm not sure if they have a full breadth and depth, or they may not have a full appreciation for where I know I come from, and I admire where you come from, and Vicky as well, coming from a sales perspective. So maybe you can tell us, what is a sales leader today? Define that in your words and how we can use it today.
And let's get some context on that. Somebody who leads a sales force, or somebody who's a leader just in their behaviors as a salesperson?
I think it would be the latter.
Yeah. So somebody that is really a leader, when you look at the sales space and say, who are the people that are performing the best and doing the very best work and sort of carrying the banner for what sales should look like, are people that have deep caring, deep trust, deep business acumen and situational knowledge, which that's sort of the area where do you have enough experience to actually help people decide what choices they should make? And people come out and they say these things like, well, I want to be a trusted advisor. Okay, well, what does that mean? It means, one, you have trust, and two, you have to have the advice. And so a lot of salespeople, if all you've got your product, you're not deep enough. You have to get a lot deeper into understanding your customer's business and how to help with those challenges. Mm-hmm. They also need to know how to create consensus and build change. And they also have to actually be a leader. They have to lead a team inside their own company and inside the customer's company. So let's differentiate it, because there's a lot of social media people here. Mm-hmm. Marketing is a shotgun approach. It's a message meant for lots of people. Right. And sales is a one-to-one endeavor where I'm making an ask and I'm sitting across from somebody and I'm doing something that's much more personal. And I think that's the part where salespeople are different from marketers, is that we're going to engage one-to-one and make an ask that you could ask in a marketing message. You don't feel the same way when you're making it in marketing as you do when you're sitting across from somebody. And you know this, right? Because you sit across from people. Sure. So that's a different ask when you're looking in somebody's eye and you're asking them to give you, in your case, maybe millions of dollars, right? True.
Absolutely. There's definitely a big difference there. So I think, and for the folks that are just joining the room, welcome to the show. We're interviewing somebody who is clearly a leader in sales, international speaker and author, and the creator of the Sales Blog, Mr. Anthony Iannarino. And we're talking about sales. I think Anthony, it almost becomes a taboo topic in a marketing and in a social media world, because they feel like, well, we don't have to really sell. We just have to talk about it. And I think there's some confusion there. And you talk about sales leaders and someone who is the one-to-one in the ask. Let me ask you this, if I could just kind of jump into an ADD moment, as I would say. How do you successfully marry the two together? You have your social media and digital marketing strategy people who really understand they really understand about creating content. They really understand about sharing the content. But when it comes down to asking for, and as you and I say, writing the big check, they draw back and they don't really want to go for the ask. So how do you marry the two together?
There's a lot in that question. So let's play with as much of it as we can. But
sure.
So social for me is above the funnel. So social is establishing your brand, developing content that represents your brand and creates value, that starts to move people through the change process. Why should I change now? Why should I consider what you're saying? Why should I choose you as the partner to do this with? You can do the above the funnel, start the why change and the establishing yourself as somebody worth talking to on social. But in my view, there's no such thing as social selling, because the ask is really clumsy on social. Like if I were to tweet you and say, Anthony, I got a great deal for you. I want to sell you this thing. Reach out to me. So, and I had this happen. So just so you know, I'm not making this up. And I've got it on LinkedIn a lot right now. A lot of people on LinkedIn are pitching. I mean, they're straight pitching, like connect and then pitch.
Yeah.
And they're ruining what they should be doing, because the above the funnel part, where you get the credibility and where you establish your brand and you're developing yourself as a thought leader and you're creating value, is what allows you to ask to capture some of the value later on. So the sale is where I'm creating value and I'm allowed to capture some of it, but you just don't want to do that on these tools. So at some point we have to get a phone conversation. Well, I'll tell you the order. 1, face-to-face is the best place to make an ask. After that, video. After that, the telephone. After that, probably text. I'd probably do text before I would even do email, but you're going to have to get close enough to have some conversation so that you can do these things. But social is what builds that giant platform that you can stand on, so that you're known, and you're known as a value creator. Why do people struggle with the ask? There's a whole bunch wrapped up in this. So I like to talk about Brian Tracy a lot.
Oh yeah, please do. Yeah, amazing individual.
His first book I think I read was The Psychology of Sales. And in that he says you should look in the mirror and say, I like myself. I like myself. I like myself. And the first time you hear him say that, you're like, what?
That's crazy.
It's
crazy. The craziest thing. Exactly.
But if you feel any resistance to that, if you feel any resistance to doing that, if you can't say those words and say, I like myself and mean it, then you're going to have trouble making an ask. And a lot of people, they don't recognize the value that they create. So they have trouble asking because they're not sure what's going to happen. And did I really earn that? Do I have the right to ask for it? But if you trust that you are a value creator, that you can help people, that you have the intention of creating value, then it's okay to ask. If you can create value, you're okay asking. And that's a hard part for some people to get through. It doesn't feel natural to you if you're not somebody that asks for what you want. I'll give you two
confidence thing.
Let me give you,
yeah,
it is. I'll give you 2 examples. I
Sure.
have twin daughters.
Right.
The one hates to ask me for money because she feels bad asking me for money. Not that I won't give it to her. Not that I've ever told her no one time.
Right.
Her sister is completely different. She has no problem coming in and saying, I need $80 for a pair of boots. And that could happen while we're on this lab. They're 2 very different people, but one has no problem asking and the other struggles with the ask. So I've got one that's a little bit too far across the line and one that's not far enough.
Interesting. Twins with completely different perspectives. So,
yes.
So I think what it comes down to, Anthony, is having that confidence. So I guess in the message that I'm hearing from you, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that, for those of you that are in social media and digital marketing strategy, they do, Anthony, and I would agree with you. I concur. They do a really great job of building the feeling and the emotions and I guess they call it social selling, but in a real sales environment. I want you to, if I may ask you, Anthony, go back and we can recap that order. It's phone call and then it's video.
Face to face first.
Face to face first, right?
The best place if you want a real outcome with another human being is face to face. If you can get there.
Absolutely.
If you can't get there, then I would go with video. And I have clients, I speak around the world and you can't go visit somebody to set up a speaking engagement. So we're on Skype and I have one client who I called him from Skype, but I was driving through the Starbucks drive-thru on my way to a meeting, but I still had him on Skype. And the first thing out of his mouth was, why can't I see your face? Why can't I see you? Why are you talking to me and I can't see your face? and that's sort of the expectation now is if we're talking, I should be able to look into your eyes, and he's going to bust chops and he's going to tease me and he wants to see my response desperately, because the reaction is what he's looking for. But that's the world we live in. So we can do these things like we're doing now because it's cheap and it's easy and the technology's good enough. So I would say face-to-face, then video, then phone. Phone's still a good place to have a conversation because you at least can have a dialogue. Email's a terrible place to have a conversation. You can't pick up the tone. Anybody can let it sit in their inbox forever.
No emotions. Absolutely.
Nothing.
So Anthony, here, let me throw a little curveball at you. So in the social media space, and I'm speaking with kind of one foot in one side, one foot in the other, because we come from the sales world, but I've kind of have one foot in the social media side. Social media is, it's all about live streaming and it's all about the love and the hugs and the kisses. But I think we lose our sense of process, right? And when I read your blogs, and for those of you joining, once again, welcome to the Anthony Conklin Show. We're interviewing international speaker, sales leader, and the creator of the salesblog.com. Please welcome Mr. Anthony Iannarino. Anthony's talking about his journey come from a rock band to sales leader. I think process is missing, Anthony. I think we all struggle with consistency and process. Can you talk a little bit about sales process as a leader and how it marries with maybe with social media can get engaged by using process?
Yeah, I mean, you have to have a process. That's a boring thing to talk about on Blab, but I think if they care about sales, you want some understanding of a funnel that's after you get through the social media part. So you've built the brand, you've got some sort of an ask, and then people have to get into a funnel, and you have to understand there's just basically a couple big pieces that you have to focus on. You have to focus on discovery and really understanding somebody's needs. And then you have to focus on developing the right solution and presenting that for them. And then you have to focus on the acquisition where we're going to ask for money and we're going to negotiate and take the next step. There's a whole bunch of asks that you have to make along that whole path. And I would tell you, if you don't know what the asks that you need to make are, one of the easiest ways to sort of lay out your process is to say, if I were to make a whole bunch of asks, what order would they come in? Anthony, I need you to give me some time. Okay, there's an ask. Right. I need you to give me this information. There's an ask. I need you to help me decide whether or not this is the right thing for you. Let's talk it through. There's another ask. I need you to go away for a week. Let me put this proposal together. And I'm not giving it to you because you're going to flip right to the price. And I'm going to give it to you 5 minutes before we're together on a video like this. Right. Because I want to answer all your questions. And if you flip over to the back, you're not going to understand the value that I'm creating. You're just going to see the price. You're going to think it's too high. Then I'm going to ask you to give me a verbal. So there's all these asks. But if you just line those up and say, how do I normally win deals? What's the ask? And then here's the question that I would ask if you're listening to this and you need to do this work. What do I have to do to deserve that commitment I'm asking for? So I have to create enough value that somebody can easily say yes. So what are they saying yes to? And why should they say yes to take the next step with you? And you should know every stage.
Right. So, but so the message is value creation and we all quote Tony Robbins. You have to give more value to that person than anybody else can. And whether you're doing it in a sales environment, you're doing it even in like relationships. Like I know your relationships with your daughters, Anthony, my relationship with my kids. And for those of you that are parents, I know Brian Fanzo's in here, and Brian's a big follower of yours as well with his kids. It's all about adding value to people's lives. And that is what builds trust. I think what people do is they want to rush through the process because we're in such an ever-changing world with new platforms. I mean, I don't know, Anthony, I don't know if you use something called Anchor. Anchor is this new audio platform that people are using. And, and then it's Snapchat and it's Periscope and it's Blab and there's all these different platforms, and people get that shiny red object syndrome, and they forget that it's all about the process. It's all about taking each step and making sure each step is not concurrent. You have to follow them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then you go for the ask. And I think that's the one thing that we miss. And I think the social media folks in the room, and I want to welcome everybody again to this amazing interview with Anthony Iannarino, is that following that process is so important. And I appreciate you sharing the details on that. So.
Yeah, and it's the one thing about social that I'll say is that it's a lot easier if you've developed trust over a long period of time, and you've developed that trust by producing good content and sharing and being engaged with people, so you're known. And if you're known, it's easier. If you're known, and it's still know, like, and trust. I mean that hasn't changed for 3.5 million years, but the known part comes first, And if you're like, then the trust is a lot easier. So you can move through these faster if you already have that trust in your known entity.
Absolutely. So know, like, and trust. It's not something new. There are no new fundamentals. Know, like, and trust is something we should all be thinking about whenever we speak to, whether it be our customers or vendors or our executives. Is something we should always be, driving home over and over and over again. So, Anthony, I want to switch gears up a little bit. And for those of you that have questions, Vicki Fitch is our amazing co-host. Vicki's been a little quiet today. She's doing her thing, making sure she's managing the room.
And you have to use her whole name, Vicki Fitch.
Right. Vicki Fitch. She doesn't have a last name. Vicki Fitch.
I'm going to start that. I think I'm going to start like a little campaign. This is, my name's not Vicki. It's Vicki Fitch.
Vicki Fitch.
Like we'll put
like
the accent.
Prince, like Prince. Just one.
I'm going to say Anthony.
Purple Rain.
Yeah. Anthony, is it Iannarino or Iannarino?
Pretty
Iannarino.
Close.
Yeah.
Iannarino. Yeah.
Iannarino.
Iannarino.
I come from the DeMarcos, so I come from an Italian background. So I always try and get those enunciations right, because you never know where that accent is going to be on which syllable, right?
When you have as many vowels, yeah, you should know how to say it.
Absolutely.
Well, with Vicki Fitch, you don't have to worry about it.
So again, we're gonna be taking some questions. We'll be we'll be opening up the box to have you guys hop in and speak to Anthony. I know there'll be some questions at the end of the interview, but Anthony, I want to get into a topic that I know is near and dear to my heart, because I have a little bit of a personal agenda here, because I've been wanting to talk to you about this and speaking. I mean, I think I've watched you grow as a sales leader. I've had the honor and privilege to be associated with you, work with you. You've been an advisor to me. You've helped me with some situations on some larger deals I'm working on. I appreciate your counsel, and I've seen you kind of pop on the speaking scene. And I know you're traveling literally around the world. So tell me about plan becoming a speaker. Was it an outgrowth of your sales efforts? Tell me what happened.
Anthony, you're digitized. We can't hear you. Anthony, can you hear me?
You guys here?
I am.
Wow. I don't know what happened there.
I was here the whole time.
I don't know if I got booted out, or I don't know. I don't know what you heard last, but the recording is still going, so it's a good sign.
You said the question was, how did I get into speaking, I think. Right?
Yes.
Something like that.
Okay, we're back. Welcome back, everybody.
We broke Blab.
We broke Blab again. I don't know, Anthony, you're breaking Blab.
I don't think that's me.
It's the power from within, Anthony. You just didn't know it. It was
just boom.
If Robbins didn't break it, it's hard to break.
Wow.
Tony really put it to the test. He did it. He definitely did great. Oh, okay. Our Blab's back. I don't know, Mr. Blab stud guy. We had a little a little bump in the road, so I think we're okay now. So,
and Jason, nobody's been able to see my only a few people can actually see what I've been posting in the chat box. So I even, maybe with this kick out and the refresh, but I did refresh twice. Can you guys see it now? Can you put a 1 in the chat box if you guys, okay, that's good, Jason. Most of the people can't.
Okay.
Anyway, put a 1 in the chat box and I'll be quiet while we try and work it out while you guys.
Okay, we're good. I see Anthony. Okay. All right, we're back. So I'm not sure where I got cut off, but we're back. So I want to jump into speaking, Anthony. It's something that's been near and dear to my heart. I know there are some speakers in the room that are anxious to hear what your perspective is, and really want to hear about your journey as a speaker. So you started out in sales. You've become.
I can't hear you again, Anthony.
Oh, Anthony, you're breaking up again.
Jason.
Accomplished so much as
Okay, I'm back. Are you here, Anthony? Can you see me, Anthony?
I'm still here, and I can see and hear you.
You are such a powerhouse, dude. I'm telling you, your vibes are totally sending blab on the fritz.
I've been rock solid. I've been here while you were gone. Everything's fine.
Well, I don't know if that's true. You might think so, but I don't think they could see you, because I could see
Oh, really?
myself, and then I had to refresh because I had to keep refreshing to get back in. But yeah, but I don't think they could see you either. Yeah, all seats were boinging. They couldn't see you. So I'm glad you were still looking all handsome and everything, but the crowd was the crowd was a little stumped there. Hey, could you Cliff, could you try and call Jason in here again, because I don't think my comments are showing up again, and to tell him to get in here and see if he can fix this. Maybe if we take off the drop-in section, maybe that would help. Because that might have been it. And Anthony is trying to get back in. And so I just told him, no problem. I'll entertain you guys.
With a song.
Yeah, well, you don't want to hear my singing. I call myself a joyful noiser, and you just don't want to hear that. But I will be happy to ask you a question. I know we don't want to ask a question Anthony was going to come up with, because obviously he wants to be here for the answer. But, you know, I was actually just reading one of your blog posts and you were talking about basically, I don't want to say it out loud, but I want you to tell them. But you were talking about the differences on people. It was the picture of the airplanes with one cutting across the other. So why don't you just share that a little bit? While we get this thing resolved.
That's yesterday's post, and I wrote it about the difference between the establishment and disruptors. And it's an interesting political time, and they keep talking about the establishment and disruption. And I was just thinking about that's the least interesting place to look at it, you know. And I think that the establishment really is the taxi industry, you know, and they think that you don't care about the quality of the transportation. You're just trying to go from point A to point B, and Uber thinks about it in a completely different way. And they disrupt a whole industry because they have a different idea of what people really want. And you look at the toolkit that's come out. And so the establishment says, we get to read your book proposal and decide if it's good enough to publish, or we get to read your article and decide if it's good enough to publish. And there's no more gatekeepers. So the disruptors are not only the people that are doing the disrupting, but the tools that enable them, like this. So television thinks we get to decide what people see. We get to greenlight projects. But now with YouTube and things like this, we decide to have a TV show that's very much like the McLaughlin Group or something like that, from the days where he would have 4 people sitting around talking about some subject. Yeah, we can just do that anytime we want to, and we can have people that want this content get it. It's just a very interesting time to think about that, and how much it means that we have to change. It means that we have to change what we believe, and then we have to change our actions, because there's nothing preventing anybody from doing really anything that they want to do. You want to sing? Well, Vicky Fitch, you don't want to sing. But if you did want to sing, you could sing and you could record it and you could market yourself without anything between you and your audience, which is it's a really interesting time.
Well, and I will let Anthony get back to his question, but if we get time at the end, I would love to have you expand on that a little bit, because I have a question about it. But we were just filling some time talking about one of his blog posts while you were gone, Anthony. And I'm going to chat over here with Jason, who is so sweet and says I have a beautiful voice. Yeah. I'm going to take that, Jason, as a wonderful compliment, and I'm going to work with him while you guys chat, and hopefully we don't get booted out again.
Anthony, I apologize about the technical difficulties, but you know, it's a technology business, right? Stuff happens.
No worries.
I've actually switched over to my MacBook Pro just to make sure I don't have any issues on my side. So that's why I'm in a little bit of a different position here. So maybe I asked too much about speaking, and then it's like a taboo topic, and then Blab gets angry with me.
So far, so good this time.
Okay, we're good. So I want to talk about speaking, Anthony. It's a topic that it's very, very hot right now. I mean, I think you can't swing a dead cat by the tail and someone not be a motivational speaker. And I mean that with love and not with cynicism. It's just that everybody's popping up as a speaker. You know, whether you're a a 14-year-old motivational speaker or you're a 7-year-old motivational speaker. Everybody's out there talking about how much they want to be a speaker. But I think in my journey, it's speaking has sort of been an outgrowth of my life experiences, and it's been not only personal but also professional and family. And you talk about what you know really well. And sales, strategy, B2B very well, sales leadership well. And then all of a sudden, boom, you wind up on the speaking circuit. So tell me a little bit about how that started, how you're managing it, and maybe give some advice to the speakers that are in the room, because I know there's a few in here that definitely want to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, it's I very, very intentionally decided I was going to become a professional speaker. And I made that decision. You talked about the aha moments. 39 was kind of an aha moment for me. I was going through a lot of things in the way of just personal growth. And I thought, I'm supposed to be sharing what I know with other people. I mean, that I'm supposed to be helping other people transform. And to do that, I'm going to need to speak, and I'm going to need a bigger platform to do that. And I immediately joined Toastmasters. And I was never, a lot of people think Toastmasters is to get you through your fear of speaking, but there are some people who have that, but not a lot of people. A lot of people are okay, especially in Toastmasters where there's 30 people in the room. It's not an intimidating size of a crowd. Right. But I joined specifically because I wanted to be a professional speaker. And that's different than just being a speaker. There's a lot of people who are speakers, but not professional.
I agree with you.
And so that there's a different bar. And I'll just give you one sort of story to try to tell you about my growth there. I spoke at Toastmasters, and I'm one of those people. I have so much that I want to share, and I've written so much content that a 7-minute speech is really easy for me to do. Mm-hmm. I know I can entertain a group of people for 7 minutes. I've known that since I fronted a rock band. So the fear part wasn't my issue.
Right.
But I would not prepare for a 7-minute speech other than just deciding what story I was going to tell. And I was able to get away with that for a long time. But I went to speak at Toastmasters, and I told this great story, and I had a great speech, and everybody enjoyed it, and everybody got the message, and everybody was laughing, except for Dr. Brenda Jones, who was a PhD in communications at Franklin University, where the Toastmasters group was. And she was my evaluator. So at the end of every speech in Toastmasters, you're evaluated. And Brenda walked up and said, "Anthony, that was a wonderful speech. And I can't wait to hear it after you've rehearsed it." And it was like a throat punch. And I thought, she called me on it. She called me on my ability. So what she was telling me was, just because you can get up and speak and tell a story, that does not mean that you're meeting the criteria that you set for yourself as becoming a professional speaker. And she knew that about me. So she called me on it. And from that day forward, I've never given a speech without rehearsing the speech. I mean, sometimes if it's a brand new keynote, I might rehearse 35 times, including on video and on audio and checking. And that served me really well. And I started down that path for a couple of years in Toastmasters, and I've always had speaking opportunities. Mm-hmm. But when I started the blog in 2009, I mean, I bought it in 2007, but I really started writing in 2009. On December 28th, 2009, I sat down with my wife and I said, I'm going to be paid to speak professionally. I'm going to do this thing. It's going to be a change. I'm going to get up at 5. I'm going to write every day. I'm going to do what I see Seth Godin do and Chris Brogan and other people. And I'm going to share this thing that I have to share. And I'm going to be speaking professionally by the end of the year. And she said, I really don't understand anything that you just said, but I support you anyway. And 10 months later, I got the first speaking engagement. And I think that you sort of have to go through doing the work to be a speaker and then doing the work to let the world know that you have something. So a lot of people can speak, but you need to get to the audience that needs you. And for me, that's salespeople, success-oriented people, leadership, entrepreneurial people. And then the second thing I'll say is that there's just different kinds of speakers. So I don't like the term motivational speaker because I don't think it's exactly right. And I don't think, I mean, I know Tony Robbins doesn't like that either. You know, and it's not what he does. If you go to see him, that isn't what he does. He helps people transform. Mm-hmm. And that's basically what all speakers are trying to do. And basically, no matter what, you'll go to Toastmasters and they'll tell you you're entertaining, you're educating, or persuading, you're doing. anytime you're speaking, you're asking somebody to change their mind about something. You're asking them to change their direction about something, or you don't need to give the speech. If you're not asking somebody to change, you don't need to speak at all.
Right.
So you're asking them to change, but you really need to have content. And I think what people want is they want the message, but they also want to know, how do I do that? And most of the speakers that I see that have a long lifespan, I mean, so I can speak and then I can speak to that same group another time and I can be asked back, is because you have deep content. So you can actually help people with that transformation. That's my best direction to give you on that.
So the key is practice. Practice. That's the first thing. And you and I talked about this, I don't know, maybe 6 months ago. I mean, Tony Robbins is probably the most practiced speaker that's walking upright on this planet. I mean, he's told his story hundreds of thousands of times, and he's done it with a different color to it. But there are things, and I think you know him, I know him, I've been watching him for 35 years. There are some things that I don't. There might be some new nuggets that he drops in there, but for the most part, the context of the story is about the same. So it's all about practicing. And then the other thing that you brought up, which I think is really interesting, and I'm gonna call someone out here who's in the room, Brian Fanzo, because Brian's a social media. He's a social media evangelist.
I know Brian.
You know who Brian is. So I'm going to call Brian out. I think Brian is probably at sort of the cliff of where he could start talking more to not just about brands and technology, but he has a message for corporations and companies that want to go through transformation, need that transformation. So, and when you talk about content, it's not just content for content's sake. It's really giving the content to get people to make changes, to get brands to make changes, to get companies to make changes. It's that shift. It's that mindset shift. So I think that's critical. So for those of you that are speakers in the room or learning to be a speaker, and as I go through my transformation as being a speaker, you have to have an intent, you have to practice, and you have to give value that is and telling a really compelling story to get people to take action. There's always that call to action, right, Ant? That call to action.
I mean, there's, you know what, if you don't want somebody to change, there's nothing for you to talk about. I mean, you're there because you have something that you want to share that's going to make their life better. Mm-hmm. And then what's that transformation going to be like? That's what we're doing when we're speaking.
Right. So I want to talk a little bit about, I want to shift over to the sales blog. I mean, this is your baby. This is what you do. It's what you live, eat, and breathe, as well as being an international speaker. So, Vicky, if you have the link to the sales blog, we can drop it in the seat here. I just want to I want to talk a little bit about that. Anthony, how are we doing on time? We're good. We're about 40 minutes. Okay, we're good. So I'm going to see if I can drop that into the seat.
You can't when you're recording.
Oh, you can't when you're recording?
No, you have to wait till you're done. I put it in the chat though.
So we'll do it after the recording's over.
Yes.
Vicky Fitch just put it in the chat.
Vicky Fitch. You got to get it right. Come on, Anthony. Vicky Fitch.
It's Vicky Fitch. Okay, I got it. I'm good. I'm good. So Anthony, I want to talk about the sales blog. I have the benefit of being able to read those blogs because they come to my inbox every day, and I appreciate that because I think you're just such an amazing writer. So. But I want to talk about the sales blog, and I also want to invite some people into the box to ask you some questions. So would you be able to take some questions, Anthony?
Sure, absolutely. Happy to.
Okay. So Vicky, why don't we open up the box for some questions? We'll come back to the sales blog. We'll talk about the sales blog, and then I want to talk about your article in Success Magazine. I want to talk about Forbes. I want to talk about some really great stuff, and then we'll wrap it up with a few closing comments. So cool. Anybody want to jump into the box and ask Anthony some questions? I know that Brian's here. I don't know if he's hanging around, but I know that he made a comment before. I wasn't sure if he wanted to jump in. So, and if you don't want to jump in, you could just do a /Q and put a question in the box. If you want to ask Anthony about sales leadership, about his international speaking experience, you want to talk about the sales process. It's critical, guys. Having a process is so critical because if you want to get to an end game, it's what's that quote they say? If you don't have you'll wind up at a place called nowhere if you don't have a plan. I forget what the quote was, but it's critical. It's critical to have a process, and you got to execute on that process every single day.
And those of you who are trying to get into the box before, we are allowing the call-ins. But if you guys have not been on, if you're just starting on Blab, I'm not letting you in unless you put your question in the chat box, because we're not looking for any trolls here today. So I just wanted to put that out there. So if you're brand new to the platform, or this is your first day or your first week, you need to put something in the chat box so we know that you're actually looking to have value here.
Okay.
You don't have trolls, do you?
No, Anthony never has trolls. They troll me. It's all me. They do this until I change the name. Now that I've changed it, it's going to be Vicky Fitch. I think I'll be troll free. It was that underscore that's really getting people down.
That's what it is.
Yeah. Anthony, there's a question from Keith. He's asking, what was the turning point when your speaking career really took off? I added the really part, but when it took off.
I don't know that there was a turning point. I mean, I think when I got more aggressive about identifying myself as a speaker and making sure that people knew that that's what I wanted to do. And I went from probably, 12 to 15 gigs a year to 40 to 50 when I started really branding myself as a speaker and making it known. And I would tell you, if that's what you want to do, you have to just call yourself that. Right. And you just have to let people know that that's what you do and give them the vision of what that is and start sharing it. Otherwise, they don't know. And you have to you have to be very blatant about it. And I think the more I was direct about it, that's when I started getting more gigs.
Okay.
Did you find yourself starting doing free speaking gigs? I know some of the people in the chat box personally, and they had been asking some questions. Did you find yourself doing, free gigs to start with, and they transitioned, or did you find yourself establishing yourself as a professional speaker in the beginning and, identifying fees? So where did you go?
Vicky Fitch, I'm a sales guy, so I don't speak for free. I mean, if you create value, you're entitled to capture some of the value that you create. And the first gig, I think I spoke to 1,000 people. Wow. I mean, and what I gave them changed their ability to do their job. And so, I mean, if you take 1,000 people and they're going to be 1% better, there's a price tag for that. So I've never spoken for free. I was paid from the first gig I took.
I love this guy. I love this guy. I'm tired of people saying all the time, no, you have to start. And I won't say any bigger names, but you have to start for free. You have to start for free. Right. I don't believe you have to start for free, but I do believe that there's a value in giving your services to certain organizations. I personally volunteer at a couple organizations where I'll speak to schools and stuff to help kids, start developing and understanding how to live their dreams and how to understand that they're selling even from a very young age. But, but I totally agree with you.
I think if you give something away, though, you're saying it has no value. I mean, if you're doing it for charity, that's one thing. I mean, I would do that lots of times. But I think that if you tell somebody, like, I'm a $500 speaker, you're going to have a lot of people say, I can't hire a $500 speaker. I mean, that would disappoint my people. I'm trying to deliver them something great that's going to help them change their results and transform. I can't get that for $500.
It's sort of like when you buy a book, right? If you don't invest in yourself, if you don't invest either in a business coach or a life coach or self-education, if you're not going to invest in that, then don't do that. So my point is, if you don't buy a book, you don't buy a $40 book and say, oh, I got to pay $40 for it. It's like, I want to buy a $40 book because I know there's $1 million idea in there that I can walk away with. Right. And that's it's sort of like what you do, Anthony. You get up on stage and someone's going to hear one or two things or even 5 or 6 things you say and go, I'm going to make that change and I'm going to increase my business by 30 to 100% type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and I get notes from them and I have people, I mean, sometimes when I'm fortunate enough to hang around and do a workshop, I have people during the workshop go deal with a customer issue that they were stuck on and come back and have it resolved with just a little bit of explanation on how to do it. I mean, and they get the immediate result. That's the best thing. Take action on it right now.
Mm-hmm. So best speaking gig and most challenging speaking gig. I won't say worst, but best speaking gig and most challenging one. I got to hear that.
I have a client called Travel Counselors in Europe, and they have about 2,200 people that show up for their gigs. And I mean, that was one of my best gigs. I could tell you what made it one of my best gigs and most challenging at the same time. The first time I spoke to them, I was in Liverpool, England. And it's a big, I mean, you just have to imagine a room. It's 2,200 people. It's probably 80% women who are all doing travel from home. And this is a huge event with big speakers. And I am fourth on the bill. So there's a content speaker like me that goes on first. He did a great job. He's a really good speaker. And then after me is Michelle Mahoney, who started Ulta brand. So the lingerie thing. So, and she's beautiful, vivacious, funny, engaging, outrageous. I mean, she walks on stage and says, the first time I met Bill Clinton, I walked up to him and said, I so wanted to be Monica. I was like, oh my God. I mean, so that's like the first thing out. So this she's got people laughing and crying. She almost lost her business.
Wow.
And Vicky Fitch, I stepped over the line with you.
No, she's good. She's all right. Vicky's good. No, Vicky's good. Vicky's good.
Hilarious.
I think it's great.
It's what she said. I'm telling the story.
I believe you. I'm just
away.
Mind-boggling.
So she takes everybody on this journey about almost losing the business and getting a loan from a bank as the moving trucks are pulling up to take all her furniture away. And so we're laughing, we're crying, we're laughing, we're crying back and forth, which is just, it's so powerful. And then at the end, she breaks down crying and she says, and my husband just ran off with my designer and he owns 1 share more than I do of the business. And she's just bawling. And now 80% of the audience are women and most of them are bawling because they've just been on this journey. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I got to follow this woman. This is incredible. You know, she was so good.
Yeah.
And she's followed by Casey. I forget her last name. You can find, if you search for Casey TED Talk, Casey was blind from the birth, but she didn't know. And when she was 17, she went to the doctor with her mom. And the doctor said, what do you want to be when you grow up? And she said, I want to be a race car driver. And he looked at her mom and said, you haven't told her? And she said, no. She never told her daughter that she was blind. So
wow.
She goes on this journey. She quits her job. She decides to raise money for cataract surgery for 6,000 people. She rides an elephant across India and raises money for 7,000 cataract surgeries. Ooh. She's on right before me. And the last thing she says before she gets off the stage is, Carolyn Casey, that's it.
Okay.
She says, and my husband just left me and he owns more of the business than I do. And she breaks down crying. And I'm like, oh my gosh, now I'm up. So I'm like, and I looked at the CEO of the company. I'm like, so it's Elvis, the Beatles, the Stones, and then you. You know, like, who did the lineup here? Why was I not before these people when I had an easier time? But I went out and I told my story. Mm-hmm. I told my story of playing music. I told my story of my brain surgery. I told my story about my journey to sales, and everything went wonderful. And they loved me and they brought me back. And after that gig, I went and did 7 or 8 countries with them. I did 2 tours with them and did 7 or 8 countries because I had content. But everywhere I went, they found a speaker like that in front of me. So the best gig ever, because the audience is amazing and the environment's amazing and travel counselors, they're amazing. But then having to follow people. Well, I'll give you one more quick one. We were in Australia and the guy that speaks in front of me tells the story about his family leaving Vietnam on boats after South Vietnam falls. And they're attacked by pirates. They're on a tiny little ship and the pirates steal everything that they have that's worth anything. They're out about another couple weeks and they're attacked by another band of pirates who don't believe that they have anything left. They think that there's still something that they're holding out on. And so they take this baby and they pick him up by a leg and they hold him over the ocean. And they say, if you don't give us all of your gold or any jewelries or any money, we're going to throw this baby into the ocean.
Oh my gosh.
And they plead with him. And then they throw the baby back on deck. They literally throw the baby back on deck. That's the speaker. I mean, the guy speaking is the baby. And I'm like, holy crap. Why do I have to follow these people? But
I'm pretty sure I don't ever want to speak with you because I'm pretty sure.
You're a trend
Oh
there.
no, wait! I have a good story. Maybe I will. I want to be on before you.
I just walked out and told him I was the pirate. Yeah,
I mean, that was good. That was.
I don't have anything else for you. It was too good of a story.
So your best speaking engagement and your most challenging were all together. But if I'm hearing you, what you're saying, Anthony, they're all life changing, actually.
And be you. I mean, you have your story. You have to tell your story. It doesn't matter what somebody else's story. I mean, right. Their story's theirs. Yours is yours. Yours is interesting to us because we don't know it.
Right. Right. And it's your story. It belongs to you.
Yeah.
Because I always tell, when I do my speaking engagements, I always tell people whenever you leave the room, you have greatness within you, and you're the only one that has your own greatness. You have yours, I have mine, and only you can tell from your greatness. So that's really great information, Anthony. That's very helpful. And so for those of you that are thinking about becoming a speaker and you're having challenges, just go back to being you. Tell your story. That's the most important thing, is speak from where you are. Speak from your place of being, passion and your purpose and building a bridge called why. So Anthony, I'm gonna kind of wind this down a little bit, but I want to get into two more points, if I may. We're coming up on the hour, so we got a few more minutes left. When we open up the show, we talk about helping entrepreneurs connect their passion, their purpose, and build a bridge called why. I want to see if you can maybe give us sort of the Anthony version of your passion, your purpose, and your why.
It's complicated. I had this conversation with Brian Tracy when I interviewed him on my podcast, and it was just really, I asked him, what's the number one value in your life? What's number one? And he knew immediately, and it's the same value that I have. His number one was freedom. Actually, I asked him this after our podcast, so we weren't even being recorded, which is too bad. It's freedom. So it's freedom from suffering. It's freedom from fear. And that's number one for me. And so I try to help enable people to transform. And mostly it ends up, you have to face your fears. You have to deal with them. And a lot of what you're afraid of, and I've written this a whole bunch of times, we fear the wrong dangers. And whatever your passion or your purpose is, probably the fear that you have is, I'm afraid if I go out and share this, people aren't going to like it, or they're going to mock me, or they're going to be a troll and the people are going to criticize me, or they're going to judge me and all these things. But that's not the real danger. The real danger is living a life and not sharing your purpose and not doing what you're passionate about. That's the real danger. So the real danger you have is you just have this really short time to go and make a difference and touch other people and do something to help people transform. And that's going to give you meaning and purpose. So whatever that passion is, you got to start acting on it now, because you just don't have a lot of time. And I've got half a blog post coming just on the fear of missing out. And, every day I get offered about 11 other things that I could be doing. Right. All of which are absolutely interesting. And I know they're going to be wonderful projects, but you've got to do what's most important to you. And whatever that is, you just have to start. And I'm passionate about that. I mean, and my purpose is to help people transform their lives in a lot of ways that they didn't think possible. Mm-hmm. And a lot of it starts with sales, just because I talk to the business community. And so a lot of it is, how do we do better work for and with customers?
That's awesome. That's great, Anthony. I want to touch on the sales blog. I know I brought it up a few minutes ago, and I really didn't get a chance to get into it. So tell us a little bit about the sales blog. Tell us how can people sign up to get your blog post every day, because I know I get it every day. So tell me a little bit about it, how it started, where it is today, where it's going to go. I see you're doing video as well. You're getting involved in doing a lot of
the
video.
Link on his summit. I think he'd like to talk about his summit.
Oh,
we'll do that quickly. That's tomorrow. I have I'm at the 1:45 slot, and I have 24 ways that you lose deals. So in 15 minutes, I'll tell you the 24 ways, and you can write them down, and I'll tell you how not to have that happen. The blog is just a pure labor of love for me. I'm a writer, so I can't not write. Mm-hmm. And when I saw Seth Godin writing every day, I thought, wow, you're allowed to write every day if you want to. I didn't know that. And I thought, I'm going to start writing every day. I didn't know that you could do this. And I started hitting publish, and I have some posts in 2009, but December 28th, I made the decision that I'm going to start really sharing and not withhold anything. So I share everything. And it's been great. There's 2,400, almost 2,500 posts there now. It's all archived, so you can go back and find anything. If you just pull down blog posts and archive, there's tons of stuff there. Mm-hmm. And it's been a great resource, and it's been wonderful for me to be able to share and share with a community of people that want this and that share back. So if you go there, I would ask you to sign up for the newsletter, which is thesalesblog.com/newsletter. Every Sunday I send out a long form note. It's probably 750 words or something like that, but it's all actionable. It's something you can put to work on Monday. If you're a glutton for punishment, though, and you want one every day like Anthony, there's a box lower on the blog that says, get this in your inbox every day. And there's like, I don't know, 3,600 people that are crazy enough to sign up for that.
Yeah. And by the way, every word is key. I mean, because you being a writer, every word is key. I sit there. I'm like, I gotta. We talk about content being consumable. You're just so consumable. It's really great stuff. So
thank you.
I've been a better. That's been a big benefit to me. So I really appreciate it. And any books in the making, Anthony? Any thoughts of writing a book? Or?
One book, October 11th, and I hope you'll bring me back on so we can do a Gary Vaynerchuk like book pitch, and we can ask people to buy something near 11,000 copies the first week, which would be terrific.
Awesome.
Anthony will buy 10,000. So
I'll buy 10,000.
That's awesome.
I just got Gary V book today. So okay.
Did you buy 8?
I bought 8.
Or just one? Yeah.
I did buy 8.
See, you got to ask for the multiples. Yeah, October 11th. It's called The Only Sales Guide You'll Ever Need. And
awesome.
It's on Portfolio Penguin. And they found me on Twitter and on the blog, and they reached out to me to say, why haven't you written a book? And I said, I did, and I'm publishing it in January. Mm-hmm. And they said, let's talk about that. We could give you some advice. And then they ended up buying 2 books from me. So they bought this one and they bought the second book. But we'll keep the second book a secret.
Okay, great. We got some more questions here, Anthony. So I'm going to squeeze a few more minutes out of you if you don't mind.
Cool.
So Doc Muscles is Adam. He's asking, what does your daily schedule look like?
I go to bed at 10 o'clock. And Anthony sent me a text last night at 11. I didn't get it.
I figured that.
I had to send it this morning. Yeah. I go to bed at 10 because I get up at 5 and I pour coffee and I drive to a gym, and I have a trainer waiting for me every morning at 5:30. So the very first thing I do every day is lift weights and tomorrow run. So I've got a personal trainer and I work out every day. That's the first thing.
That's great.
After that, I come home, I do a little bit of work, and then I go to one of my offices to work. And I work on clients, and then I have a couple businesses, and I generally work a pretty regular schedule throughout the day with meetings and things like that. And then after work, I spend a lot of time on content creation and content development. Mm-hmm. Spent some time with the family, and I probably put in about 12 hours on the weekend, probably 6 hours both days. It's interesting. There's a software program called Airtable, and I've been tracking everything I do every minute. And I'm pleased that I spend about 4 times as much time as I thought I did with my family. But I'm disappointed that I have a second table that connects to the first table where I'm tracking the time to say, what are my major projects? And I don't devote enough time to my major projects. So they're taking longer, but I've traded some of that time for time with the family while the kids are still young. So that's it. And at 10 o'clock, I go to bed. I watch 1 hour of television a week. Embarrassingly, right now it's Walking Dead, which we watch as a family, and we will outlast.
How old are your kids?
My son's 18 and my twin daughters are 16, and we'll outlast all of you because we've been, in a training situation watching these videos, the TV show.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have a very, very disciplined day-to-day schedule, and I go to inbox 0. Every Saturday and Wednesday, and then I let email pile up because it's just not a priority.
Anthony, thoughts on journaling? Because I'm a big journaler, and I find it more therapeutic. Any thoughts or ideas on journaling? Is it a good thing to do? Do you do it? Recommend it?
I do, and a lot of stuff shows up on the blog.
Okay.
I mean, because those are real things that are on my mind, and I use a software program on Mac called Ulysses. And it's just a straight text editor. And I only write in text because I want the format. So I like things like day one. It's beautiful.
Okay.
But I really just like a text file, because should day one go away or Evernote goes away, I'm going to have my text files forever. So I journal there. And I tend to do that daily. And a lot of it is about gratitude, or it's about things.
Right.
David Allen, who wrote Getting Things Done, says whatever has your attention is probably what you need to pay attention to. So I tend to journal whatever has my attention.
That's awesome. That's great. I think we're good. I mean, anybody else have any questions, or you want to jump in the box and ask Anthony a question before we turn the recording off?
We've got the how much do you read? You want me to do that one real quick?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
For Doc Muscles, a DO. I read every day, and mostly I mostly I only read nonfiction, but I'm trying to remedy that. And since Umberto Eco died 2 weeks ago, I decided to pick up the Name of the Rose, which I've never read. I never read any of his work, but I knew his work through Nicholas Nassim Taleb, who wrote The Black Swan and Anti-Fragile, which are two great books. And in one of those books, he talks about Eco's anti-library, and he's got this massive library. And he talks about how when some people come in, they always say, have you read all these books? And the point is not to have read all the books, it's to have all the books. So when you run and read them, you have a library, which is what I'm like, that's an anti-library? I didn't know I had an anti-library because I've read about 30% of the books that are in the library. And I've got a Kindle that's got about 1,100 books.
Wow.
That I've read about. Well, it's a lot lighter to carry a Kindle than it is to carry 8 books on the road with you when you travel. So
yes,
the Kindle works better.
Yeah, I'm an audiobook guy, so I put everything on my iPhone. So I don't know.
That works too.
Yeah, it's great, especially when you do a lot of traveling. So this has been great, Anthony. So I'm going to ask one more time. Anybody has any questions? Want to pop into a seat? Vicky, you want to maybe free up the seat for a minute to see if anybody wants to hop in? I want to thank everybody for joining us here. This has been the Anthony Conklin Show with a very special guest, international speaker and author and sales leader, Anthony Iannarino. He has been traveled the world. He's an amazing blogger, and I can actually call him a very good friend of mine, and I really appreciate him taking the time to join us tonight in sharing his journey. So, Anthony, before we end up the recording, Vicky, did you want to say something?
Well, because I had a question for him from earlier, because we were talking. Yeah, we were talking when you got booted out, and we were talking about an article he had written on his blog post yesterday, and I found it really refreshing because the current day and age, people are always talking about, adjusting these price points where everybody's dropping. They don't hold their price. They're always dropping, trying to be the cheapest, this, that, the other thing. And after reading your article, I just thought there's somebody that gets it, that it's true. Like, I'm not looking for the cheapest price. I'm looking for the best value. I'm looking for, if I feel like $1 million because a limo takes me somewhere instead of an Uber, it's the experience that I'm getting. If an Uber driver makes me feel like the Queen of England instead of a limo driver, I don't care if it's the Uber driver. It's about the experience. It's about the feeling. It's not about the cost as much as people think. The cost comes into play because people don't make the experience. And so when I was reading your article, that's one of the things that triggered for me, is that I resonated with that, is that I feel that way, that there's just not enough value given. People are constantly trying to drive a price point down instead to build the value. And I liked that about your article. And I just wondered if you had any other insights to share on that, or
I'll just share one is I don't use the word cost when I'm talking about price. Mm-hmm. I use price, because the price and the cost are two different things. And as soon as you start explaining, like, I can get you a lower price, Vicky Fitch, but you're going to be in a stinky taxi cab where the guy's been smoking and he had an Italian sub for lunch, and you're going to be behind bulletproof glass and the seats are all ruined, but for $12 more, you can have the experience you want. When I tell you the cost, the cost is what you're giving up, and you're giving up all the things that are going to make you feel like, well, now we know of your great dream to be the Queen of England.
Did I share that in my out loud voice?
Yes, which is great.
And it's being recorded, just so you know.
Yeah. So the difference between price and cost is what's the difference that makes a difference for that person. And I think most people underestimate the value that they create. And so they think they have to compete on price. And most people don't know that price is a business model. It's not a strategy. It's a model that for the whole business. So you can't discount your price if you're really trying to create value, because it's not what you do. You have to play your game. You don't see Apple. I mean, Apple doesn't discount. No. They know there's value in the brand and they're not going to discount it. And so you see them behaving in accordance with the value that they create.
Anthony, is that the Good Enough post that you just have up on your site? That's
there's a video about Good Enough. Yeah. Just because I think a lot of people compete, and the reason they have trouble winning deals is because their prospective customer settles for good enough, and they think, I don't need better than this. And the salesperson's not good enough at what I would call justifying the delta. What's the difference between my price and your price?
Right.
There's a blog post though from my trip to Florida a week ago where I think it's called Violating My Own Beliefs on Price, because I took a car from Jacksonville to Jekyll Island and the car had a very bad suspension, and it was a horrible experience. And it was because I thought that all I wanted was transportation, but what I wanted was safe transportation, and that was the different.
Oh, you forgot to add that word in.
There's the delta. Anthony. There's the delta.
There's the delta. Yeah, and I was thinking, like, for $80, seeing my children again, I would have paid that. I mean, I would have gladly paid 80. We were between trucks and the cars all over the road, and I'm like, this is. You do not. There are a lot of things you don't want to discount.
Oh, amazing. Anthony, we're getting some more questions, and I'm going to ask you if you can stay, if you can, that's totally fine.
I'll stay for a couple minutes, sure.
Okay, maybe we'll just do a couple more questions. Vicky,
sure.
There was one question in the chat, and there's one question on the side here. So favorite apps, Anthony. Any favorite? I know you talk about Evernote. You talked about it, but any particular apps that you have? Like, tell me what apps are on your first screen in your phone.
Mm. I have the phone down here. So on the first screen, what do we got? The things that are, I would think, worth talking about. Mm-hmm. Dragon Anywhere.
Great app.
The dictation software. Yeah. And it's $15 a month. But when I'm stuck and I'm driving, the ability to dictate whole thoughts, whole blog post writing, that's great. You can see, you probably can't see it. There's a little butterfly on there, Ulysses. And that's the text editor, which I love. OmniFocus, which is my task manager.
Okay.
And there's about, 500 tasks in there. Basecamp, which is a project management platform. Mm-hmm. Airtable, which I talked about.
Right.
Simple Note, which is just opens up a screen. You type notes straight into it. Mm-hmm. And of course the Starbucks app.
That's critical.
Yeah. That's critical.
Well, I want that one if it's linked up to your account or whenever I just charge yours.
It's linked up to my Amex. So yeah, you could do a lot of damage.
Anthony, you're so generous. What a great guest.
It just reloads and reloads and reloads.
What a great guest you are.
Awesome. That's awesome. So Vicky, before we close out the recording, did you want to add any last comments or any input?
No, just to thank you so much for being here, Anthony. We appreciate your candor, your input, your stories, and the ability to connect with you on a personal level to really share what your story is. Even though you weren't really the pirate, we got the impression. We totally get where you were at and what value you bring to the table. So we promise not to ask you for a discount when we do one of when we do.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
I appreciate being here, Anthony. Anthony, before you leave, can you tell everybody where they can find you?
thesalesblog.com. That's the best place. Mm-hmm. If you go to the contact page, it's got my phone number, my Skype, but you can email me, whatever you want. And if I can point you at anything, any resources or help you, just let me know.
Great. Hey, everybody. My name is Anthony Conklin. Once again, thank you for joining me here, where we speak to leaders and icons. And we spoke to international speaker, sales leader, and he's an all-around great guy. He's awesome. Give it up for Anthony Iannarino. Remember, you have greatness within you. Always live your life to the max. And we'll see you guys really soon.